Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. All right. Then we do Alan Rickman.
I tried.
David, that was you did the best one before we recorded, and you decided to not
Did we
even
need
participate.
3 Alan Rickmans?
We needed at least yours.
Nottingham.
All right.
All right, fine.
I was a little closer to Squidward that time.
He is a bit of a Squidward.
Yeah, a
He
little
is.
bit.
He is. I'm Reese. Across from me we have,
David.
to his left,
Irina.
to my right.
Noah.
And making the bold decision to alternate between British and American accents throughout this podcast, we have
AJ.
the movie we're talking about today or tonight or this morning, whenever you may be listening, is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I'm glad this one actually had a subtitle for once because I was tired of doing the year delineation at the end of each of these. I had it originally titled as Robin Hood 1991, and then when I went to look up the movie, it was like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and I was like, oh, forgot about that.
You can call it Robin Hood Pot.
Yeah. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. It's came out in 1991, and it's directed by Kevin Reynolds. Noah, you're gonna flip for one of these movies in his filmography, in a good way.
Huh.
He directed Red Dawn, Fandango, The Beast, Waterworld, 187, The Count of Monte Cristo,
Yeah, baby. Wait, which one? The old one?
the one you like.
2005.
Oh,
The
I thought
2000.
So that was
early
him?
2000s one. Yep, that was him.
nice.
The movie stars Kevin Costner, Morgan Freeman, Christian Slater, Alan Rickman, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio.
Close enough.
She's a Spanish of Spanish descent, I believe, or Italian. No, sorry, Italian. It's Italian. The movie was written by Penn Densham and John Watson, with a story originally by Penn Densham. Like, with a name like Penn, it's no surprise that you end up being a writer.
I think I know what I will be.
He's mightier than the sword, I hear.
How many of those jokes do you think this guy gets?
It's like, oh, pen.
Pen, mightier than the
writer?
sword, right?
Tell her?
Yeah.
And we're just feeding into that.
Yeah.
And this marks the third Robin Hood movie that we're covering, and the third movie of 7 in this new mini-series. Not new anymore. Hoods in Other Hoods, where we talk about Robin Hood-esque like figures in various areas of the world. So this is just starting off with the nice foundation of Robin Hood and then jumping around the globe elsewhere. For those that are new to this show, though, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So, AJ, starting with you, had you seen Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, before this episode?
Yeah, I saw it on streaming. I remember vaguely around when it came out, and I'm a big fan of the talent in this movie. I never really, I guess as a kid, I always remember the stories. So when this movie came out when I was a little older, I don't know, going back to like Winnie the Pooh and Pooh Corner, all that stuff was kind of refreshing, I guess.
Christopher Robin.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christopher Robin. Ewan McGregor. I never saw that movie. Not the movie we're covering tonight, but here, I'll be a little more clear. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Had you seen that movie?
Oh, yeah. I guess different talking bear movie.
Yeah.
Yes, I had seen it a few times. I remember watching this on VHS, honestly. So
Yep.
I don't know when I first saw it, but yeah, I've seen it a handful of times for sure.
Noah, how about you? Had you seen Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves before this episode?
Long ago, I think I watched the first 20 minutes.
Really? That's all you'd seen of this?
Because that's all I remembered whenever I started watching it.
Interesting.
That's all I probably watched maybe, I don't know, just past.
It's a blur.
Pass.
David, how about you?
Yeah, I had seen this a while back, like a good long while ago. I feel like my dad put this on.
Because it is kind of a dad.
My dad was a big Kevin Costner fan, so
Kevin
chances
Costner
are,
is every dad's favorite
You
actor.
guys probably
Yeah, what is
watched a
with
lot
that?
of Dances with Wolves.
Oh, I watched a
Yeah.
ton of Dances
Yep.
with Wolves.
Yeah. He was a big name back then.
It's funny that it's funny that everyone loves Kevin Costner because I think he's like my least favorite part of this movie.
Well, the thing is,
He's good in his own way, but
he's known for other things. He does other things much better than this. Like any baseball movie, you throw Kevin Costner in it, and he makes it better.
That's my dad's favorite movie, by the way.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, there's a few baseball
Field of
movies.
Dreams.
Yeah.
No, actually not Field of Dreams. The other one.
What?
Was it for the
Bull
Angels in
Durham.
the Outfield.
No, not Angels in the Outfield either. Although I did
The
grow up watching that a
Sandlot.
ton.
Is it really not Field of Dreams?
No.
Silverado.
Hold on.
It's not
I
a
got
baseball movie.
Is it for the love of the game or something like that?
I don't know, man.
Moneyball.
No.
Money. That's Brad Pitt. David, I'm surprised.
Oh,
you're
Jonah Hill.
It's been
Jonah
Oh
Hill
yeah, I
and
was
Kevin
right. It was
Costner.
for the love of the game.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but he's in a lot of baseball
Space
movies.
Jam.
And I would say his star did fade, but it's kind of come back again with like Yellowstone and all that, and how huge that show is.
Supernova.
I don't even know what to do with that.
It's coming back.
Supernova.
Hey, it faded and then it bursted real big.
I like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kevin Costner,
Home run.
big, big actor in the 80s, 90s, and to a certain degree still today. And I think this is the first one we're covering with him in it, and we're definitely gonna, I think, get more into how we feel about this performance and the actor as a whole in the episode.
Yeah, we're not going to discuss his accent, so don't expect that.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, no one talks about that.
Arena, had you seen this movie before?
Yes. I don't remember the last time I watched it, but it was a while ago. And I had watched it several times because it's very familiar. I had fallen in love with the soundtrack or more so the film score. I think I had the CD of this music when I was little and I would play it a lot. But I always think of this movie as a laundry day film because that's what mom would put on when she would get, all the laundry going for laundry day.
Yeah.
It was always movies like this, sort of action adventure, very digestible stuff. So
For my part, this movie occupies there's the A-list nostalgia movies in my brain that are
Jurassic
instant
Park.
classes. This one's off to in the B tier nostalgia part of my brain where it's like, oh yeah,
With Dragonheart.
yeah,
exactly.
It's very Dragonheart.
Dragonheart
Their
is-
trailer song.
Yes, for sure. Both. I don't know which
Both
one of
good.
y'all pointed it out though. Both movies, I think it's safe to say, the soundtrack exceeds the quality of the movie. It's more known for that than the other.
Yeah.
Or than its actual quality as a film. I'm not saying this is bad at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just like the
soundtrack
scores
is bigger.
are instantly iconic in a way.
And we get Bryan Adams in here.
Yeah, what's that really well-known ballad that came out of this movie?
Oh yeah, it's the gosh.
I
there was-
wanna-
69.
That's John Cougar Mellencamp. Oh, I got it right here, actually. Everything I do it for you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one.
Everything I do,
do it all for
you. I forgot already.
Yeah, but I'm mildly nostalgic for this. When I watched it again, I was like, yep, I remember all this stuff. It's kind of coming back to me. But it's a movie I had maybe only seen 2 to 3 times, I want to say. So yeah, I mean, it hangs out there. It's got a little space in my head, but not a very fuzzy one, much like Noah said.
Yeah, baby.
But yeah, it was a movie, though, that it did come flooding back to me in a way. So that must mean something for it. Whereas there's other movies I know I had seen, but I'm like, I can't remember this. So yeah.
Here's my big problem. One of my biggest problems with this movie. I know this is early on for me to say this, but
Yeah, I
it's
was about to say, you'll
the
get plenty.
combination of both a widow's peak and a mullet.
I was just looking at that on
Like-
screen.
Why does Robin Hood have to have both of those?
Because this is the early 90s, Noah.
Yeah, hairstyle was very
come
important
on,
to
man.
them.
Oh,
Yeah,
gosh.
I definitely in my notes had mullet comments.
Yeah, but the widow's peak too.
Yeah, it's
That would be like me trying to grow out my hair and play Robin Hood. It just
you should,
work.
David.
Could not do it. I have the charisma. I don't have the hair.
You don't have as much of a widow's peak as Kevin Costner
No, I have a
does.
receding hairline that mimics Widow's Peak.
No, it does not.
So you're more like Friar Tuck.
This one, yeah. Going
no.
deeper and deeper.
It's not like that.
All right, David. Give us your best Gal Gizmondo impression.
Guy Gisborne.
Yeah, Guy Gisborne.
Gal Gizmondo.
I'll give you my best Gal Gizmondo.
Give us your best Guy Gizmore. Give us your best
Your
Guy.
brain refuses to acknowledge that name.
Give us your best Guy Gizmore call to action, please.
Oh, man, I kind of want to do Alan Rickman, though. Can I do Alan Rickman?
I want to hear. You never did Cousin.
Do the two of them talking to each other.
Oh, gosh. All right.
Just go for it.
All right, everybody. If you want to watch this, if you want to listen, if you're on a podcast, and you got to make sure, cousin, please, you need to be resolved.
Still sounds more like Squidward.
I'm
just imagining an argument like Guy is on Squidward's lawn and he's like, "You're on my lawn. I'm the sheriff here."
All I'm saying is if you listen to this podcast and you don't give it a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, I will take a spoon and cut out your heart.
I like it. I mean, you pivoted towards not.
It was all over the place, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you got there.
And then bring in Sean Connery last minute.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, that was
These
a perfect.
two should be wed.
That was a perfectly coherent call to action. Basically, what David was trying to say is we could use your support in any way, shape, or form. However you may be listen or whatever platform you're on, or if you're on Apple, is man, you threw a wrench in my plan. All of now I can't speak.
All of this brought to you by Gal Gizmondo.
Yeah, but those 5 stars on the old Apple platform really do help us a lot. So if you could head on over there, or if you are already there, we would very much appreciate it. Thank you. AJ, you want to give us that story?
A time when the only way to uphold justice was to break the law. He gave the people the courage to fight. Who stood for freedom became a legend. Kevin Costner, Morgan Freeman, Christian Slater, Alan Rickman, and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. Prince of Thieves.
In 1194, at the end of the Third Crusade, Richard the Lionheart, King of England, is visiting France. This leaves the cruel Sheriff of Nottingham, aided by his cousin Guy of Gisborne, the evil witch Mortiana, and the corrupt Bishop of Hereford, to rule the land. The Lord of Locksley Castle is killed by the sheriff's men for remaining loyal to King Richard and refusing to join their gang. His lost son, Robin of Locksley, had followed the king's crusade and spent 5 years in Ayyubid prison in Jerusalem. Robin and his comrade, Peter Dubois, break out of prison, saving the life of a Moor named Azim. Mortally wounded, Peter makes Robin swear to protect his sister Marion and distracts the pursuers so Robin can escape. Robin returns to England with Azim, who has vowed to accompany him until his life debt is repaid. After a run-in with Gisborne, Robin goes home and finds his father's rotted corpse on display in their ruined castle. Duncan, an old family retainer blinded by Gisborne, tells him how his father was falsely accused of devil worship. The sheriff consults Mortiana, who foresees King Richard's return and panics that Robin and Azim will be their deaths. Robin tells his childhood friend Marion of her brother Peter's death and his promise, but Marion, remembering Robin as an arrogant bully, sees little need for his protection and is determined to stay and look after the people on her property. They flee the sheriff's forces to hide in Sherwood Forest and encounter an outlaw band also in hiding. Their leader, Little John, challenges Robin to a duel, which Robin wins after some difficulty. Will Scarlet, one of the bandits, holds a grudge against Robin and protests when Robin assumes command of the outlaws. Robin shapes the group into a formidable force against Nottingham. They rob rich folk passing through the forest and distribute the stolen wealth and food among the poor. Friar Tuck joins them once he understands their cause. Marion offers Robin any aid she can, and they begin to fall in love.
All right, AJ, is there a way you'd like to kick this off? Any talking points you want to...
Yeah, let's just, talk about the characters. So, Kevin Costner's Robin. We've already kind of alluded to some thoughts. We'll get the big one out of the way, the accent. He can't do an English accent, so he didn't.
It's funny. I was reading on Wikipedia, and I know that's not the most trusted of sources, but I tend to like to believe it is at least generally correct. Like, I think they get the specifics of things wrong, but the more broad stroke stuff I think is generally accepted to be truth.
Can I guess?
You can guess what happened.
Here's what I bet. At first, they told him, do a British accent. And he was like, okay. And then they started doing that, and they realized, like, well, it's better if he just goes regular. And then they're like, yeah, go ahead and go regular, I guess. And then he's like, okay, are we going to reshoot any of this? And like, nah.
No.
So...
That's my guess.
You're
So
right.
you're saying British people are irregular?
You're right, but flip
No.
it.
The other way? So they started American, and they're like, maybe do British.
Kevin Costner wanted to do British, is the thing. He was like pushing really hard. I want to do a British accent, and they kept saying, no, that'll take away from the Kevin Costner charm of like what you're good at.
Yeah.
And so what we ended up getting were scenes where he would lean into the accent, and they just like let it in for whatever reason. And then other times where I guess they pushed harder and he didn't do the accent. So hence we get a very uneven accent versus non-accent performance from Kevin Costner. But from what I can tell of the accent that did slip through, he probably just should have sounded like Kevin Costner the whole time. Like, just go with it. Who cares? Like, you already don't look like you really belong in this era, in my opinion. Might as well just sound like Kevin Costner. Just give it the Kevin Costner charm.
Agreed.
But yeah, how do we feel about this performance, accent aside? And let's compare them to the other Robin Hoods that we've talked about. And if y'all want to do you know how I like my rankings. Y'all want to do a ranking? AJ, let's start with you first.
Of the three we've covered, I actually have him at the top.
Cool.
I mean, it's a lot of it is just in his interaction with other people, and his camaraderie and the merry men, and kind of instilling that spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is definitely notable that this movie has I don't know if if Kevin Costner is the best, but this has the best set of merry men out of any of these three movies.
Oh,
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
talk
I
about him
agree.
later, but Little John is like perfect.
Yes, agree. David.
It's hard to say
Well,
because...
first, what do you think about Kevin Costner, and then rank?
So, I haven't seen this in so long, it was basically a fresh watch, because I remember liking it a lot as a kid. But then, as we watched for the beginning of this, I was like, wow, this is not good. Like, his performance is not good. And then, as it went along, I got, like, somehow swept up in the movie, and I was like, no, I like it. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like, he pulled me into it. And I do wonder if there's something in the beginning. We're watching a scene right now that is one of the worst, I think, when it comes to his dialogue. But he, like, grabs a blade and squeezes blood, and he's like, I'm gonna get them. So, something to that degree.
No,
and
he's like, he swears on his father, or
Whatever
his
it
blood,
is.
that he
I'll
will
avenge my
them.
father.
Yep,
yeah, it's not good. And I think
I
a lot of
liked
the
it.
problem is, that scene was terrible.
I liked it still.
I was laughing, but I think also the writing was probably not as good. But once you get with the merry men, I think that Kevin Costner does really well with them. So I don't know. It's a
Married
mixed
men.
bag.
Okay, now rank them.
What was his name? From
We
the
got
last
Russell
one?
Crowe, Taron
Yeah.
Egerton, and Kevin Costner.
Yeah, I'll probably give a slight edge to Russell Crowe, and then followed very closely by Kevin Costner, and then sorry to my man, other Robin.
Taron Egerton.
Yeah.
yeah. Irina.
I'm gonna have to go with Kevin Costner first.
Oh, and what are your thoughts on Kevin Costner?
Well, I like him in general, but I do think it's a slight miscasting in my mind. Like I think someone else could have done a better job.
Mm-hmm.
But this is partly because I grew up watching this movie, and so I just kind of see him more naturally in that role.
Yeah.
He has that more lighthearted charisma with people. He does better when he's supported by other actors,
Yeah.
I think. When he has moments that he's sort of lone wolfing it, it's not as interesting. So it's really hard because I think Russell Crowe is right behind him for me because I think he could have done better in his role.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't have enough of that merry men interaction that this movie does. So, yeah, and then Taron Egerton last.
Not for lack of sort of trying.
Yeah.
Noah.
All right. Kevin. I don't really like him that much as Robin Hood.
Kevin. I don't like him.
He's my number one, right? Of the three. Only because... you wanted me to talk about him.
Yeah.
No, you can move on now. You said you don't really like him. It's fine. It didn't have to be long. It didn't have to be long.
I don't like any of these Robin Hoods. I'll just say that. Kevin Costner, he's just a more likable character. He's the most
Amiable.
He's more roguish than Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Right?
I would
So
say
he fits that mold a little better than Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe to me, like, look, when you're looking at Robin Hood, you're thinking, yeah, that guy's a ranger and he's like a little hoodlum guy, but he's cool, he's witty
spry.
and all this, and he's spry. Yeah.
I don't think Kevin Costner's spry either, though.
No, he's not spry, but his attitude is more accurate.
A little more spry than Russell Crowe was.
A little more, yeah.
he's getting closer.
Yeah.
It's getting closer.
Russell Crowe, he's like a warrior. You
Yeah.
know, you put him in the field, he's gonna lead the army. Like
Commanders of the
he's
Navy
gonna go at the front line with a sword swinging and like maybe a shield and all that because he's not super built. But anyway,
he's a bruiser. He's like a brawler.
Exact. Well, yeah, Gladiator got it perfect. He's that kind of guy. He's more of a brute force guy, but there's some wisdom there, and I think that's not Robin Hood, in my opinion. I think the movie that movie is decent, but he's just not Robin Hood to me. He's some other cool guy. He's not Robin Hood.
I think I might agree with you.
And then lastly, Taron.
Poor guy.
I love him. It's just
That wasn't the movie, man. That wasn't the movie.
come on.
What's funny is he's the spryest of the three.
He
And
is,
Yeah.
but he's just way too modern. I have the same criticism as much as I love Henry Cavill. Same criticism for Witcher and Henry Cavill. There's just something about him that's too modern looking. Like I look at you and I see, oh yeah, that's maybe the 80s at the like the earliest I could see you in.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Kevin Costner for me, I will say mixed bag. I think he does end up limping to the finish, though. There's a lot of people that derided him as like, oh, this is the worst thing you're gonna see this year.
Yeah.
That's not that bad.
Like, people view this performance as just one of the notoriously bad performances. But when you look at this performance and you separate the very questionable accent, which I will agree is bad, from the actual performance of like what is it? What kind of energy are you getting from this character? The energy is the closest to a Robin Hood
Exactly.
of the three. That said, if I'm going strictly by best performance, I think I by default have to give it to Russell Crowe because he wisely was like, I'm not going to try to act like Robin Hood in the classical sense because I can't do that. So I will just do what I do best. And I think he gets out with the least amount of, like, the most unscathed in terms of, like, there was nothing about that performance that offended me except, like, why are you in a Robin Hood movie? So it's kind of like,
Yeah,
it's hard to...
I think he has the most quality performance technically.
Exactly. So it's a hard... It's very close, but it just to keep things interesting, I'm giving the slight edge to Russell Crowe, so David's not out there alone on an island.
I'm gonna have a hot take about that. I wasn't here for last week's episode, so I have a hot take about that last one, at least from my recollection. I think that movie is boring.
When's the last time you watched it?
Yeah, you haven't seen it
That's
forever.
not a hot
A
take.
couple of years ago.
That's not a hot take. If you hear
Okay. I think it's boring.
It's-
It's slow. I wouldn't call it boring.
To me, it's boring.
That's fine.
How about you
Robin Hood needs to be like flighty and fun.
That said, you should watch it again. You
I'll
might
watch
find
it
it
again. Yeah.
less boring today.
I will watch it again.
Because I
just
found it,
remembered
I
being
remembered
boring.
it being boring going into that episode, and then I was like, I could see why someone thinks this is boring, but I'm weirdly more invested in it this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, second place, buy it. The thinnest of hairs, I'll give it to Kevin Costner, and then clanging his way in the gutter, just like trying to screaming for help under under all the dirt and crap.
Oh, bro, help me out of the sewer.
It's Taron down at the bottom there. Sorry, buddy. I think this is his only miss though. Like Taron hasn't. He's done a great job in other movies. I think Robin Hood's his only mistake. Okay, we're out of the out of the Costner talk. Did y'all want to talk about some of the story here? We can the setup here that's different is that in this one, Robin Hood was born of more rich blood. It would seem
Similar to the more recent.
I think that's how it's supposed to be, though.
I think we talked about it a little bit. There's not a finite interpretation of Robin Hood. The original doesn't actually talk about that. There's been some down the line people have sort of filled in the gaps, and some people have said that.
Not in any books, or
Yeah. The original story was pretty vague as far as the original story.
here's where my problems start with this movie though. Like it's hard to feel like having him be born rich is very antithetical to someone who robs from the rich and gives to the poor, even though he was brought down by, like, yes, his house was torn asunder and taken over by the Sheriff of Nottingham when he was presumably at war, and that brought him low. But it took that to give him the motivation to change things, and I guess also going off to war. And he was a bully before this? Like,
Apparently.
it seems like he was kind of an asshole.
yeah,
Well,
I didn't like
he-
that
he
much.
bullied Marion as a child, which you don't really know what the concept of bullying was in that statement there.
Yeah,
like
what they
the,
said
the
is,
way boys bully girls, or is it more serious?
To me, it sounded like, medieval flirting. Like, oh, he burned
Yeah, exactly.
my hair.
You burned my hair.
The disconnect, though, I'm getting is, like, you're telling me these things, but I never believe that Kevin Costner's Robin Hood did those or was
I agree.
that person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I
you don't
agree.
get the sense that that was his history
Right.
based
No.
off how he's performing.
And you know why that is? Because they start right off in the prison. They don't start before how he got imprisoned. They don't start, it showing him in his past growing through that and then having a redemption arc.
But he lets you know by saying you have to believe that war and prison will change a man.
Yeah, so easy. That's a duct tape fix.
there you go. I'm refined now.
Yeah.
there's some telling and not showing, I guess, in this movie. But what I will say this movie has a lot of work to do. Like it's a long movie already. I get why they have to set these puzzle pieces up or these chess pieces up.
You know what I'm going to
Early
say
on.
here? Multiple movies.
We could have guessed that.
Well, Noah, if you had been on our last 2 episodes, those ones very much had that idea in mind, and it did not work out. So sometimes it's best to just put all your cards on the table.
Well, here's the problem. They did it wrong. Like, they just got to deliver the right product, right? So you can have a good idea. You just have to execute well.
Well, how about you share your pitch? Like once I do want to
Sure.
hear this pitch. Share it once we get through the story and you can walk us through like where you would have
I do like that your answer is just be better. Like that's
be
summed up.
better.
You're just
It's
like
the same as
just
get good.
Get good. Like
No. The problem is, we'll talk about it later.
yeah.
Sorry for just now like blue balling everyone that wants to hear what I say.
No, it's okay. So we are in you mentioned the prison, which brings me to Morgan Freeman, which we haven't talked about yet. He portrays Azim Eden Bashir al-Bakir. I'm sure I said that perfectly.
Better than all the other ones.
Yeah, sure. AJ, I know you picked this series. What is the is there a history of this character in Robin Hood tales, or is this like a fabricate or like made up for this story alone?
I don't know if this inspired, with the Jamie Foxx version of Little John
It seems like it did.
kind of being Moorish, or if there is kind of a source material that inspired that as well. I don't think this was a character in Ivanhoe, but I could be wrong.
Also, they were fighting in the Crusades, apparently.
Yeah.
That's what they were in the other Robin Hood we watched too.
I don't know why I never put that.
Robin
Did you
Hood's
miss
always
that
been
part?
a post-Crusade.
Yeah, it's
All three of the ones we've watched were all
that's
Crusades.
yeah, that's actual, King Richard and King John. That was the time period.
Right,
then.
right. It's been a long week. Sorry.
But yeah, and they refer to him as a Saracen, or Saracen at the time in the Middle Ages here was kind of just a catch-all phrase. It evolved from the original meaning. I think they even say like they're Turks or something, but yeah, Saracen is generally just like a Muslim, but he's Moorish or North African Arab kind of, I don't know, an amalgam. I mean, it was just part of this also. I mean, just look at the scimitar he carries around.
Yeah.
And it is just over the top ridiculous. And so that kind of also offsets some of the other silliness of this movie. So there's still like this whimsical, I don't know if I would hope it's self-aware with that prop, but
Right.
who knows? I mean, you can't even draw that sword out of the scabbard.
Yeah.
It looks like the swords from the original Aladdin movie where all those guys are chasing him with those giant
Yeah.
swords.
It's massive swords.
There's something I described to David, which you guys might agree is this movie definitely dabbles in a bit of a cartoonishness where it's not quite realistic, but they're all more caricatures of their characters than they are real people sometimes. And
Yeah.
that's depicted in a lot of his clothing, in particular, what Morgan Freeman is wearing.
Yeah. I will say this movie is a product of the early 90s. What I thought was weird to think is that the modern epic hadn't been, or what we see as like the 90s epic hadn't been established yet. Like this came out, what's so weird is this came out before Last of the Mohicans, Braveheart, Gladiator, all those big, like, wow, those are more modern in style, grittier.
Highlander.
Glory, I think, came out after this even.
Jurassic Park came after this.
Highlander was before this one.
Yeah.
But I don't think, like, this is a product in my sense of still like the 80s, even though it was early 90s. So the way it treats things is very, it's still heightened.
Right.
Like, it was so funny. There's Roger Ebert he wrote a review for this. It was a mixed review, so it wasn't like terrible or anything, but he wrote, so Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves is a murky, unfocused, violent, and depressing version of the classic story. The most depressing thing about the movie is that children will attend it expecting to have a good time. For one, I want to say you haven't seen the Ridley Scott version, but now in hindsight, this almost looks goofy and heightened, so that leads me to believe that I don't think it is in any way self-aware of these big scimitars and just these over-the-top moments. I think it's just, this is how you did action epics at this time. So, yeah, sorry to break it to y'all, but that would be what I don't think it was intentionally funny.
The energy of this is almost what reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean with what they're revisiting with the adventure genre that hadn't been seen since the early 90s and 80s, where Pirates of the Caribbean kind of honed that sort of comedy where it's almost slapstick a lot of the time, but still grappling with serious content. So I It was making me think of that.
I would put its energy wavelength closer to the Pirates of the Caribbean for sure.
There's one I would prefer to watch, but
Yeah.
we don't need to say.
But Morgan Freeman, do we? I mean, he's kind of doing the Morgan Freeman thing here, but I think he's I like this era of Morgan Freeman where he's not. He's kind of shifting into the wise man narratory voice that we know him for, but he's not there yet. He's still allowed to like have a little bit of fun in movies, and I think he's having a little bit of fun here. What'd y'all think?
I enjoyed him. I think his character, like that, it was a mistake the way they did him,
Yeah.
but I still enjoy him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just like seeing Morgan Freeman.
Yes.
I don't know. That
Yes.
might be
I think
might
that's
be what
what
it
it
is.
Their arrangement confused me where he's like bound to follow him and protect him
Yeah.
because he was saved, but then there's times where he just like, I'll just sit this one out.
Shrugs
Like-
his shoulders and is like, whatever.
I choose when I fulfill my oath. And like, okay, then
I'm
why,
like,
what?
why make the oath?
This is
again? Like-
this is in regards to the Little John fight, I guess.
Yeah.
I will say
No, it actually wasn't. It's the very first fight they ever he has. He goes back to his old home, and there's like 5 or 6 assailants going after that boy, and then he fights them off, and then
Oh, you're right.
then-
You're right.
Which
Yeah.
watching this scene was making me think it wouldn't age very well because I'm sure a lot of people would find that almost kind of derogatory to Islamic people or their belief system just because Robin's yelling at him like, you could have gotten off your knees and helped me when morning prayer is very, very important to them. Like they have to acknowledge when they, get down to pray. So I don't know. I
it
could
would have
see
been a
that not
moment
going
to-
over well.
yeah, it would have been a good teaching moment that they didn't go for.
No.
Another person we haven't talked about, who I would in some ways think steals the whole show. We're introduced to I don't think he's the sheriff of Nottingham yet, but in
He is.
okay, he is. He is from the start.
I'm fairly certain. I mean, I don't think there's
Who are
any.
we talking
Okay,
about?
Alan Rickman.
Yeah.
I actually think that opening scene is kind of creepy when he's that's Robin's father, I think, is let out.
yes.
Oh,
I
Brian
think that's
Blessed.
Yeah, is let outside, and there's all these like they look like cultists almost
No,
with all
they,
their.
they look like the Klan.
Clans.
I think they had such a good setup for the tension with like when his father is like hung from the ceiling in
Yeah.
that little like whatever.
after he's
whatever
already
the heck
dead?
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and they find the blind Duncan.
Yeah. I thought that scene was really good. Well, I don't know about the blind guy yet. I don't know. I mean he seemed okay too, I guess, but more just his father being up there was a good establishment of tension and how serious the story was.
Stakes.
The stakes, yeah. And it was creepy. It was a little scary,
Well,
and you're like, "Oh gosh!"
So that's the thing with this movie that's
and then they ruin it.
weird because at times it feels extremely cartoony
Yeah,
and aimed
exactly.
towards children, and then there's a couple scenes in this where you're like, oh,
You're like, "Wow."
they went for the villainy, like they
I know.
go hard.
Yeah, they could have just. You see that kind of stuff, and you're thinking, "Man, this could have been something."
I don't know. I mean, I still think there's some intentional element to it. I mean, you can even point to like, I'm not putting them in the same league, but let's say The Princess Bride, or even some of the older Robin Hood stuff with like Errol Flynn, or I mean, Men in Tights was after this, but
Yeah.
I mean, some of that amusement aspect of it is still like you still have the like kind of really dark villainy in it, and the sheriff, and it's not necessarily just mustache twirling.
Right.
Yeah.
Because even in the Errol Flynn one, what is it, Adventures of Robin Hood, you have Guy of Gisborne in there, and although he's talking to Prince John, I believe, more than the sheriff, but they are kind of a product of the time, but they're still like sinister in their own way. And you have the Robin Hood jovial aspect of it too. So there's still kind of this duality that's mixed and intertwined. That I don't know. It worked for me. I know it's not the best, but
I don't think it dropped the ball, really. What I do think is that there was a lot of potential there that I feel like if you're going into the witchy side of it,
Yeah.
lean in more. If you,
Oh
if you,
yeah,
yeah.
that side was definitely. I don't know what the point of the Mortiana
I
stuff
think they
was.
need to take the hoodoo out of this.
You do?
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with that.
You take
Yeah.
it out, or
Yeah.
you lean further
Well,
into it.
you
It's
know-
not something that you just like. Oh, by the way, he kind of has like this witch
Well,
lady.
it makes me think of King
Yeah.
Arthur, Legend of the Sword, in aspects where you have this guy who's king or sheriff who's trying to gain more power by getting favor with a witch or some sort of other entity giving them power, or almost kind of like Hercules too, where it's like, tell me where I need to go to
I
be
think
better.
I just think the issue is that the King Arthur story is created with the supposition that there is magic in that world.
Yes, I agree,
Right.
and it makes
Whereas
sense
Robin
in that world.
Robin Hood does not have magic
Totally agree.
established in that world as much. It's more supposed to be historical fiction.
I agree.
I do think
Well,
Robin Hood occupies
As part of the cultures, though, you have the Celtic culture and the Saxon and even the Bretons and like all this stuff in the older and middle, like they have these historical cultures before it gets all kind of this just English or
Right.
British, like those actual more tribal nations, even the Normans. I mean, all those. The Norse, there was a lot of superstition in those, and I don't think
I mean,
I don't know. I think part of the story has that, and maybe the movie was unintentionally unearthing some of that.
I think the point I'm trying to make is that, it's okay to have characters believe in the superstition of things, but it's not less okay to make it a plot point
Right.
for the sake of the movie that, there is all this magic stuff and witchery and
The irony being that it's a plot
Yeah.
point that if you take it away, the plot moves on. Like it's
Yeah, it still doesn't change anything.
Yeah. No, that
Right.
I think that's more what I'm trying to say. Like, it's okay to have, this characters believe in that stuff and maybe have a character that's practicing, witch stuff, but I don't think it's as okay to show like, I guess, concrete proof that, oh yeah, that worked. Or
It feels a little flashy,
Yeah.
and it's distracting from what could just be a good time watching
precisely.
this. Yeah.
And then in regards to like the goofiness of the story, I think it's okay to have the the duality of light and dark. It's just that the way in which they displayed it was like a little it like they steered too far into the goof side
Although-
for certain cases, but I did want that mirthful side of the merry men.
Well, I do think that the magic side, though, did give a little bit more of a springboard to Alan Rickman as the sheriff.
which
because
is good segue.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Back to the Alan Rickman and David. Did you like this performance?
I freaking love Alan Rickman.
Me
man.
too.
Dude.
He's so good.
He's over the top in the way that I want him to be over the top. Where
Well, he knows what movie he's in.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so out of place compared to some of the acting in the best possible way, where you want a almost goofy villain.
Yeah,
but
this was
whenever
only 3 years after Die Hard, by the way.
Yeah, and 10 years before Harry Potter. And I do think
weird to
yeah,
think.
right. He was villainous and goofy, and when you thought he was almost too goofy, he kills somebody. So you're like, oh, okay, all right, he means business.
Yeah, it ends up to be a perfect balance, and he had his personal dialogue and script kind of reworked, on his commission because he recognized that hey, this stuff is just like too flat. It needs some spice. So
Yeah.
he saw the potential there, and he went for it
Yep.
for the stuff that was within his grasp.
One of the big concerns leading up to the release of this movie is that he would outshine Robin Hood throughout the movie.
Right,
my
didn't
gosh,
they
and
cut
boy-
some of
yeah,
his scenes
boy, would
or
he. Yeah.
something?
They may or may not have. I think they did end up cutting a little bit, but
There's speculation on to how much of it was initiated by Kevin Costner, how much of it was initiated by the studio, but stuff was
Drama.
definitely cut to prevent Alan Rickman from completely outshining Kevin Costner, because Kevin Costner was the name draw at the time.
Right.
Yeah, I feel just watching the movie, it feels like they cut scenes from the first half.
I could believe that.
I feel like This was one of my problems. It is that you didn't see him as like nearly enough in the first half of the movie, and you know, you kind of see the snivelly cousin first, and he's okay, but the looming threat of Nottingham is missed until a certain point. And I feel like it should have been well established that he was the bad right from the beginning.
Yeah, 'cause-
or maybe not right at the beginning, but just earlier.
Up to that, we thought it was Gal Gadot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, he's having a lot of fun here. And the fact that he did want to punch up the script or was heavily
idea.
involved in this, I'm glad that happened.
So I feel like watching his performance in this really does show you how much of a stage actor he is.
Yes.
Because that's where all his history came from. Like his acting experience was first just on the stage doing plays. And you can definitely see it in this role. He takes full advantage of all his body language, his expressions, the way he expresses himself in all ways.
He
It's just
uses his
so-
arms.
Yeah.
He really works the scene.
Also, out of all the high-profile Alan Rickman performances, I think this one is the most, like, extra. Like, normally when you think of an Alan Rickman performance, it's pretty subdued, like, intentionally subdued.
Right.
But he has, like, he never goes out of a certain register with his voice in, like, the Harry Potter movies. And even in Die Hard, it's mostly a contained, like, yes, there's moments where he kind of goes a little crazy.
Yeah, there's some craze.
But this movie is just like, oh, Alan Rickman, you can do this. Like, this is just, it's kind of nice to see him, like, let off a leash just to, I don't know, command.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like Irene was saying, you know, the theatrical aspect of it, his use of physical space, you know, I get the sense that, you know, it's typically the director's like, okay, move over here and framing the shot. He has like this sixth sense of where the shot is, and, you know, he's intentionally moving dynamically or, you know, along with his words and dialogue.
Yep.
More so than the other actors and talent on screen are. So that makes me think that it's more him than the director.
Yeah,
for sure.
I would think so too.
He just has a lot of good body language for this movie, and it's like over the top, and I love it.
And to sort of piggyback, just because we saw a scene with him and it made me think of this, the whole movie, some of the scenes that pull me out of it, even with him in scene, is the ultra close-up shots of like slightly underneath and right in their face. And I'm like, why? Is that a thing of the time? Was that is that an early 90s thing? I don't know.
I almost think the underhead shots make people look more, like, dominant.
Yeah.
Like, because they're above.
But they did it in scenes that even weren't supposed to be aggressive. It was like, I don't know, Little John laughing. And you're like, why is the camera shaking and doing a close-up of his face?
Well, they're just having fun that day, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I was getting a headache.
Let the filmmakers have fun.
The cinematographer was having his day.
Okay, so let's talk some Maid Marian here. We've got, let me get the actress's name up again. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. Mastrantonio.
There you go.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's, but yeah, I kind of think out of the three Marians we saw, she's the second best.
Yeah. I think she fulfills the role, and it's not one that's meant to be hugely developed in this movie from what I can see. She's sort of like one of the goals in it more than what's the
A
word?
character with
a catalyst.
Participant.
Yeah. So and I'm fine with that. Like I think there is a place for that kind of character, and she fulfills the role.
She
decently.
is good.
Yeah.
Although I would say I like Kate Blanchett better.
Yeah, that's why I said second best.
Oh, you said second. Okay.
Yeah.
But also Kate Blanchett's is an interesting interpretation, whereas this one seems almost kind of my idea of the traditional depiction of the lady maid
very
that
much
you're
so.
trying to appeal to.
Very
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
so, I agree.
But here's what I like about her, is that she's not like, well, okay, she is a damsel in distress, but at the same time, you know, this is skipping ahead a little bit, But during the fight with Nottingham at the end, she's actually like, she's helping Robin Hood. She's not just staying on the sidelines, just sitting there.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, I'm going to put this fire on him. I'm going to do, whatever, stab him with a knife. I don't know. Like,
Right.
Hey,
For
Kate
an-
Blanchett put chainmail on and rode
Yeah.
in a battle, like,
So
Yeah.
I
But you know what
agree
I'm
with
saying.
you,
Yeah.
Noah.
Yeah.
She
I like
has at
that,
least
though.
more function than she could have.
Exactly,
Like
exactly.
Yeah, it could have just been a standby role.
she's not just a trophy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, the 2018 Maid Marian was so terrible. That was I'm just getting flashbacks and just
It's
great.
funny.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they like kind of do the whole like, the romance, the montage with them spinning to back and forth. But this worked a lot better than the 2018.
Oh my
version.
gosh,
Oh, yeah.
yes. Speaking of montages, this movie has a couple. I would say the first one we get. Well, actually, I'll lead up to this. So we want to talk about the Merry Men, I think, at this point. So we've had both Morgan. I'm just going to call him Morgan Freeman because his name is really long and hard to say.
Azim.
Azim. Okay, I'll just say Azim. But my brain will probably somehow find a way to mess that up as well. So we have Robin and Azim. They're kind of off on a journey. They come across a creek. Azim has them walk across first. I forget what kind of sets up this scene and why they were doing it. You almost get the impression that Azim saw something that Robin didn't. I don't know why I got that impression. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's a trap, and then Little John Little John, who's not known as Little John at the time, comes out of the woods, and all his band of not merry men yet are behind him. And they to cross this creek, Robin must pay such and such amount. A tax, and Robin Hood refuses. Which, okay, this is at the point where I was not on with this Robin Hood performance because he's just too like perfect. Like he doesn't do anything wrong, and I kind of like don't like this fight at all. I like the end result of it I like the Little John side of it.
Yeah.
I don't like the Robin Hood side of it. But
I kind of wanted Little John to win.
I know.
Well,
but,
the problem is it's too broken up. Like, he comes back and basically, hits him sucker punches him in the back.
Yeah.
Like after it's already kind of like said and done.
yeah,
It's like, oh, so that's, the hero.
There were two crotch shots,
there's
too.
he goes for the crotch shot too. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was more of a 90s comedy thing, but
I know
Yeah.
they loved crotch shots.
Bring him back. Like I'd love him.
fortunately, the actor for this portrayal of Little John is, I really like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, he's easily the best Little John of the three movies we've seen. And if there's one thing this movie does really well, except for slightly missing with Robin Hood, it's coming up with how you imagine in your mind this character to be like.
Yeah.
Like it feels, and I'm not a Robin Hood expert at all, but in my head canon, this is the Little John. I need to have the actor's name in front of me. I don't have it. Do you have it,
let's
AJ?
credit him.
Oh, here it is. Nick Brimble
'Kay.
Played Little John.
He looks like a brimble.
He
I don't know
does look like a
How
brimble.
to explain that? But
He's a
it
Jeremiah
looks like it.
Johnson
It's
kind of guy.
Yeah, but he looks the part, plays the part. He's almost the not quite jolly giant of the group.
But still has sort of a fatherly presence. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like kind of a ringleader of sorts that's second in command.
Yeah. But yeah, this is our Sherwood Forest. Is this the only movie we've seen so far that actually mentions that it's called Sherwood
I
Forest?
think 2010 mentioned Sherwood once.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
because they were hinting at that forest being Sherwood, and then they're like, hey, you'll find out in the second movie. And you're like, oh, will I?
Will I though?
Yeah, and I think with the Russell Crowe one, the attempt at the historical or historicity, the realism, tried to pinpoint a couple other locations instead of Sherwood. And just for some, fact here, trivia, the term forest in the usage at the time doesn't necessarily mean like what we think of a forest now, like a woods. A forest is almost more like a national park. so to
Okay.
speak,
Huh.
or,
okay.
or a preserved area of land specifically for the king to like hunt on and stuff. So it in the case of Sherwood, it is a forest because 2010 we saw they were actually filming in Sherwood Forest,
Right.
but it's not only exclusively woods. It could be kind of a desert or tundra land or more sparsely
I didn't know
broad
that.
swath of land. And the afforestation was a big part of the history of this rebellion in the barons and the rise against like Prince John or King John, because just a huge amount of land was kind of claimed by the crown, including the towns and people's homes and their crops and their livestock. So basically, when the king would declare this area a forest, or basically the king's land, that's why they're so upset about the deer and the poaching, because they basically have claimed even the people's own livestock, so that anything that they were tending for themselves for them to survive now is just automatically claimed by the king. So it's like a capture of their personal property. And not just deer too, like the venison at the time also just meant like game meat, like it could be boar, it could be, anything else, not necessarily deer. So it's like everything.
Interesting. Weird.
Just a complete seizure of property with this forest moment. And that's, Robin Hood fighting against that, not just, he's hiding out in the woods because, that's who he
Right.
is. Like this is a full-on rebellion
Yeah.
against this tyranny.
Yeah.
Just some historical tidbits there.
So he's originally wanted because he attacks the sheriff's men, though, correct?
Yeah.
Like they come back, or his cousin,
Yeah.
Gal Gizmondo.
Gizmondo, yeah.
Guy of Gisborne. I think it was Little John's son. They were running after him for poaching deer, and he was running away from them. And Robin intercedes, saves the boy's life, and then kind of lays down this is my property, and that's a big tension point of what's royal property, what's personal property, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I feel like is missing in almost every single Robin Hood is just the cunning side of him in a fight. This is slightly going back to the Lil Jon side of things, or whenever they have their their duel of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
I want Robin to win using he sees the area around him and he sees what he's up against and he formulates a plan of action right then to kind of get the person right. I want someone devious. I don't want cheap tricks are not what I mean whenever I say devious. I mean careful
thoughtful,
planning. Like, okay, I see this terrain. I'm gonna have him back himself off a cliff, or I'm gonna have him, be
Right.
disadvantaged.
Not
in
kicking
this
sand
area.
in their eyes, kind of thing.
Yeah, but instead, he's like, I'm gonna go in for a sword fight, and I'm gonna, head first do this. Oh, I'm disadvantaged here. Let me pull some cheap tricks. Like,
I think of
kick him in the balls.
Princess Bride whenever they're doing the sword fight with Inigo Montoya.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what I think of as a sort of Robin Hood sword fight. There's really good terrain, there's really good movement, there's some cunning.
Some quippiness.
Yeah, quippiness.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I think of.
It's funny that we keep mentioning Princess Bride because Carrie Elwes was originally
Yep.
one in the running for this role over Kevin Costner.
It's a weird thing for me to say, but I think Carrie Elwes would be is a really good Robin Hood type if he didn't have to be so goofy.
I didn't think that's crazy to
Not
say.
a weird take at all. I
Yeah.
agree completely.
I think he. I
even
think he could be
in
so
Men
good.
in Tights. Yeah, even in Men in Tights, aside from the the comedy aspect of it, like he's feels like Robin Hood. despite all the
Exactly.
He does.
satire.
That
Yeah.
and my hot take is that I think he's the best Robin Hood so far, and that is a huge hot take. But I just
don't
like
know
him.
if
Again, I
is.
think that's a pretty popular opinion. So.
Really. All right.
So,
cool.
I mean, other than maybe Errol Flynn, I think those
Yeah.
are the two people would point to.
Let's talk some montages. So the biggest montage I think in this movie happens around this point, and it is when Robin Hood begins, or the Merry Men they're kind of forming. He showed up, Lil Jon. He's Little John now, as he was humiliated in front of everyone. But they have a nice little pat on the back, and then they break bread and have drinks across fire. But after this, around this part in the movie, we see the formation of Sherwood Forest and the training montage, which was inevitable. And I think it's fairly successful as far as montages go. It does. It's like, all right, we need to fast forward to the point where Robin Hood's gaining more notoriety. And we're also training these men, and they're going to be more ready if a fight has to happen. How do y'all feel about this part of the movie?
I love this montage, and it's probably because as a kid, this was one of my favorite parts. Was when you see them crafting the bows and arrows and
setting up
the
music.
Hideout. The music is just so good, and I think a huge part to why this scene works. So that's how I feel about it, and it still hit when I watched it. I like that part.
I do. What I really like about this movie, and it goes a long way, is the setting is a character.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scenery chewing, and the score, the music by Kamen is excellent, and so there's this kind of the ambiental like just element of this movie adds so much to the character and feel of it. In addition to the actual talent, the actors, and that's why this movie is so memorable to me over the cheesy lines or whatnot. Is just this feels like the time period. Mullets aside, I think and crazy scimitars aside, I still think that this feels like everyone else feels like they're dressed appropriately.
Yeah.
And the castle scenes, just it feels like it should be the time period it is in Sherwood Forest, whether it's particularly historically accurate or not. It feels like a Robin Hood setting. Does. And there's the progression, the teaching, the development of the Merry Men, and the establishment of their kind of hideaway in this montage. And that's what I really appreciate, and I wanted to see from the Russell Crowe version is you still need to establish some of that aspect of it, because the camaraderie and the spirit is why he is this character. Yeah. Because, a lot of people can stand up to, authority and freedom, but, the way they do it, and especially in relation to the other authority figure, the church, and, Friar Tuck was really good in this, the kind of earthiness of Tuck here, and even him coming up against Azim, I don't know, it felt human.
Yeah.
And the human element of this character of Robin Hood is why he is so popular and so long-standing, is because he's not a Superman that's, far off and unreachable. He's this just kind of rogue guy that's not clean-cut, square-jawed. He's, attractive and charismatic and, real.
Yeah. So speaking, you mentioned the bishop. So all the stuff in the forest is happening meanwhile in bad guy land.
That is how it feels, isn't it?
Yeah, all this other stuff is happening.
I love the building up of the forest. Originally in this, it seems like there was nothing, and then you kind of see them put up all the forts in the trees with the rope swings and everything, and I don't know, man. I love that kind of thing. It brings out the inner kid in me where I just want to climb up there and live in a tree.
I agree.
Yeah.
And now, how do you feel about Bad Guy Land?
I don't like it.
Actual question.
I don't like that.
I was like, let's talk about Bad Guy area, and David's like,
it also establishes. I mean, before we move on to that, it establishes Robin as a leader too.
Yeah,
not
it does.
necessarily just a guy there who has a good shot with a bow.
Yes, good with the bow, and I think this one straddles the line between. I'm just gonna keep referencing the other two Robin Hoods that we talked about. Robin Hood 2010, very low on like emphasizing the bowiness of Russell Crowe's character. He gets one real good money shot at the end, and he fires a couple arrows throughout the movie, but very low on like, oh, Robin Hood uses a bow. In 2018, it's like, our language is bows. Like, no one knows of any other weapon than the bow and arrow. It's the close combat weapon. It's the long range combat. It's artillery.
It's everything.
That was so stupid. The artillery. Oh, I hated that.
Yeah, but this one feels like Robin is he's in a healthy relationship with his bow, not a toxic or weird one.
Yeah,
okay. It feels right. Mm-hmm. But Nottingham Castle, let's get into it.
Feels like Mordor.
I do think it's interesting that every time we see a shot of the castle or the church, everything seems to be backlit by a strange blue light.
Yep.
Also, everyone seems like perverts. Like,
yeah,
you just look, they don't even have to say anything.
They're all
just look
kind of
like
greasy,
perverts.
and I think this is where they use these weird close-up shots that David's talking about a lot, and so it does feel like it's intentionally trying to set this mood of unease where you just came back from this happy hearth of Sherwood Forest with all the merry men, and then you go to the castle where I don't think anyone would really want to live there.
Yeah. I mean, there's an upside down cross, a witch.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Aside from the, that Mortiana stuff again, I mean, it feels like it's everything's kind of lofty and elevated, and even the architecture is, monolithic and up high and
Dungeon-esque.
Whereas, just the scale of it is more monumental, and it's like artificial. It's artificially lofty and elevated, whereas everything else in the forest is more down to earth. But when they are in the trees, it's more organic. So
I like trees.
I don't know. Good.
You do.
Yeah.
So Marion makes a trip out to Sherwood Forest, and this is kind of when the more romantic side of this movie comes up. I would say the two mid sections of this, or at least I'll say three. The three slices of the middle part of this movie are the formation of Sherwood Forest, all the Nottingham stuff, and then the romance between Robin and Maid Marian. I guess it's fine. I'll say that about the romance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not offensively bad, but it also feels like it's, I don't know.
It's just obligatory is what it is.
I think
it's like, Maid Marian, Robin Hood. Yep, there you go.
I think the thing that irks me the most about this movie is just how freaking perfect Kevin Costner's character is. Like, he does almost no wrong. Like, every moment is a hero moment. Everything he says is like, you just get the sense that, okay, there's things where he'll say something to her and you can tell she's just like crumpling it. Like, he must have just said the most romantic, perfect thing. Yet the line is something like, "You look pretty today." Or I don't know. That's not what he said, but
back in the day, that is very forward.
Yeah. But it's like the delivery of a line or what he doesn't match her reaction to it. Like, I think it's fine. The romance is okay, and I know that they have to do it, but I don't know if Kevin Costner was really up to the task. I'm not saying he can't do romance, because he can. I just don't really think he does it in this movie.
I think some of that is transplanted from the old, like, Errol Flynn stuff where, they're copying, pasting the reactions and relationship and emotion aspect of it, but the lines aren't pulled off in the same manner by the same actor, so it doesn't really work that way.
The thing that works for me about this scene, as far as her being introduced to their community, is I feel like in my mind she falls in love more with what they've done,
Yeah, I agree.
And whereas I could see her lifestyle and where she's living and what she's experiencing being sort of dreadful, but kind of seeing what he's done with the community as more swooning than him exactly.
She also
seeing what he's capable of.
She also saw him naked swimming.
That scene could have been completely written out of this. I don't know why that was there.
That's in Kevin Costner's portfolio. Like, that had to be there.
I have to be swimming naked.
Contract line specifically.
My butt is in this movie.
I
don't know. I'm kidding.
It's right up there with what's his name from Pride and Prejudice?
Colin Firth?
Yeah, Colin Firth's lake scene.
I wouldn't say it's on that level. Colin Firth's lake scene is apparently a huge deal among a lot of women. But this one, I don't even remember him being naked in this.
I just want to know who looked at Kevin Costner and was like, I gotta see his butt.
It was me.
It was you.
It was me.
It was
While you were working at the theater.
Yeah, I was watching the movie being made, and I said, "Get that guy's butt on screen."
and some trees,
on
more
the
trees.
relationship. Yeah, the relationship does seem on equal footing, though. Like they do seem on, in the same playing field,
Right.
and it's a give and take, and it's good. It's well balanced overall, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Despite the dialogue, the dialogue doesn't seem necessarily mismatched for each other. It's mismatched for the emotion that we're expected, but it's still like they still have decent chemistry, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not bad at all.
That's why I'm saying it's serviceable. It's not like it's not the highlight of the movie. I won't get into like our perfect Robin Hood.
Yeah,
Right, right.
Kevin Costner's not the charmer swooping him, making him swoon, that kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah. I like her as Marion, though. We haven't yet talked about Christian Slater, who plays
Yes.
Judas Iscariot.
Oh, sorry,
Will
you mean Will
Scarlet.
Scarlet.
Yeah.
I know.
So, I think that his role in this, so the most benefit to Kevin Costner is he's the friend that stands next to you that makes you look good because he's just
Yeah.
bland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that he's kind of he makes that relative. He bumps up the hero here a little bit.
yeah, he's also
I don't
the
know if that was
character.
intentional, but that helps out a lot.
He's also the character you look at, and I hadn't seen this in a long time, so I didn't remember. But when he's on the screen, you're like, oh, that'll be the traitor. Like,
Yeah,
and
he just had that look.
Technically,
no, I know he has a redemption arc.
No, I was going to say technically there is an actual traitor that is portrayed as Judas in this that is not Will Scarlet.
Oh, really? So I accidentally made that joke.
Yeah,
Not even-
they made the joke in this movie with another character.
Yeah,
Oh.
here's your
didn't
13
catch that.
silver coins
30
or
silver
whatever.
pieces, yeah.
Oh, all right. That's what that.
Yeah,
okay,
30 silver
okay,
pieces.
okay. But yeah, Christian Slater, he's kind of a weak link here.
Also, as problematic, if not more so, in my opinion, with the accent, because he's more egregiously back and forth, where Kevin Costner's like 90% of the time just an American accent.
Yeah.
Right.
It seems like they didn't cut as many of the failed attempts from Will Scarlet here, but
Yeah, it just sounded. I didn't catch an accent on him at all.
When he sings his song, that's pretty British as far as somebody trying anyway.
I'm glad you were paying more attention to that then. So he flips because he tries to kill Robin in a moment, and Robin shoots his hand. He
Which
runs
is
off.
the best display of
Yeah.
Robin's skill, I think.
He runs off to Nottingham, strikes a deal with him. Like, I can tell you where he is. And this leads to the most like 0 to 11 battle I've seen, where they're in Sherwood Forest. Suddenly, some guys with arrows come over the hill.
Celts.
Yeah, and they're just normal arrows, so they're just like firing off battle. Kevin Costner, the tagline for this movie today would have been something along the lines of like 300, where he does the for Sparta or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Sparta!
Yeah.
No, but
This
Kevin
is
Costner says
Sparta.
to the trees. And I'm like, that's like the ultimate like. You don't remember him saying that? He
I
yells.
didn't remember.
He yells
it.
to the trees, and I was just picturing like, oh, that's this movie's 300 line.
That's his for Frodo.
That's like the Robin Hood
I must have
aggro
been, I
action
must have
line.
been looking away at that moment. I didn't
Yeah.
remember that.
But suddenly the enemy is upgraded to fire arrows. Like it's like, all right, guys, let's bring the fire ones out. Like that. This isn't all we got. And then suddenly
this
there's
isn't working.
suddenly there's a trebuchet just like shooting like, and I'm like, where did that come from? Like how did you?
They rolled it through the forest all the way from the castle.
But yeah, I think this is the most or one of the biggest battles in
Yeah.
the movie. There's some peril with Little John and his wife, and Robin Hood saves the day. And he kind of when he saves her, he kind of just hilariously swings on this rope, and it just falls. And he's like, oh, just
'Cause it was on fire.
The cuts between the actual rope he's on
Yes.
that's not on fire so obviously, and then it cuts to a rope on fire just by itself.
Yep.
Twice.
Also,
that was a little rough.
What's funny about this scene is, or what progresses after this is, they think they've lost Robin. So I want to know. So all the fires are put out at this point. He fell clearly into one of the houses in Sherwood Forest,
That would hurt, man.
and it was completely engulfed in flame. So I'm led to believe he got himself up, brushed himself off, walked into the woods, and then at the opportune moment decided to walk back over the hill and say, "I'm alive."
Yeah,
Like,
I guess so.
I want to see how he got out of that and why it took him so long to walk back over the hill. Because it was daytime when the fight happened, nighttime when he walked.
Too much
over
time. This movie is a brisk 2 hours and 28 minutes. They didn't have time to figure or to show that to the audience.
Whatever, though. I get it. It's late 80s, early 90s movie. You know, this is what you do. Did y'all like this battle?
Yeah, I did overall.
Yeah.
I mean, it had an appropriate amount of tension to it. Especially, I mean, you really feel for the Little family, John Little, his wife, who is actually, pretty proactive herself and their family.
Oh, yeah. I love her, actually.
Yeah, that really worked well. And also the other action set piece with the hanging, the scaffold, the rescuing of the kids and the town proper. And
I like that sequence a lot.
That's a really good sequence too.
Speaking of the baby, was it just me or did that umbilical cord look like it was braided? Like it came out.
They probably knotted it because you do have to close it off, basically.
Well, it looked like it came straight out of the tummy, braided.
Well, look,
I was like, what is this baby doing? And it was
adding
just
it.
braiding. No, wait, what?
It's give him some credit for adding the umbilical cord. A lot of movies, they just hand him a 3-month-old clean baby and they're like, call it a day.
That's true. Y'all have to tell me what happened. I mean, we're kind of at that.
Well,
point.
in the baby sequence, I was thinking about bringing it up, and now that you brought it up, I will. Irene and I were talking about this sequence. They birthed her. It was an emergency C-section, and then Little John takes the baby, runs off, and then Maid and Marian and Robin Hood, everyone leaves the tent, and we're like, wait a second. Did they just leave her post C-section, just by herself in there, and they all just run off to dance? And
they're caught up in the moment. David.
It's a whirlwind of merriment. I don't know, man.
AJ, I don't know. Did I interrupt you earlier? Were you? I think you might have been still talking.
No.
Okay, sorry.
Did we do the second part of the plot yet, or
no? But that already we did the whole thing.
Yeah.
We didn't. Oh my gosh. Wait. Yeah. AJ, do you want to finish the plot? I think I've passed the point.
All right.
Yeah.
Robin's successes infuriate the sheriff, who worsens his abuse to the public, but which increases their support for Robin. The sheriff kills Gisborne for failing to stop the outlaws. Seeking Mortiana's advice once more, she recommends he recruit Celtic warriors. The bishop betrays Marian after she gives him a message warning King Richard of Nottingham's plots, and she is taken prisoner. Duncan rides to Sherwood, but is followed. The sheriff storms and burns the outlaws' hideout, capturing many with Robin presumed dead. To consolidate his power and claim the throne, the sheriff proposes marriage to Marian, who is Richard's cousin, claiming that if she accepts, he will spare the lives of the woodsmen and their families, specifically the children caught during the attack. As well as her lady-in-waiting, Marian reluctantly agrees. But the captured ringleaders, according to Nottingham, are to be hanged anyway as part of the wedding celebration. Will bargains with the sheriff that he will find out if Robin is alive and kill him. Will informs Robin, Azim, John, and a few other survivors of the sheriff's plans, but does not trust Robin. Will reveals that the reason for his animosity towards Robin is because he is actually Robin's half-brother. After Robin's mother died, his father had taken comfort with Will's mother, a peasant woman. Robin's anger over what he saw as a betrayal of his mother's memory caused his father to leave Will's mother, leaving Will fatherless. Robin is overjoyed to learn that he has a brother, and they reconcile. On the wedding day, Robin and his men infiltrate Nottingham Castle and free the prisoners. Azim inspires the Nottingham peasant to revolt, forcing the sheriff to retreat with Marian into his keep. The bishop performs the marriage, and the sheriff is about to consummate it when Robin bursts in. Friar Tuck finds the bishop fleeing with bags of gold and burdens him with additional treasure before defenestrating him. In a fierce fight, Robin kills the sheriff and Azim kills Mortiana in defense of Robin, fulfilling his life debt, leaving Robin and Marian to profess their love for one another. Later, at Robin and Marian's wedding in Sherwood, just before Friar Tuck pronounces them husband and wife, they are briefly interrupted by the return of King Richard, who gives the bride away and thanks Robin for saving his throne.
AJ, is there a place you want to kick this second portion off, since we already kind of talked about the fight in Sherwood Forest? And
yeah, so we kind of touched on and started talking about the I guess rebellion kind of skirmish, the rescue attempt of the captured prisoners that are about to be hanged. We have this kind of this plot where they're going to use gunpowder to explode stuff, and that kind of goes awry. So Robin has to step in and reveal himself instead of just shooting from the shadows. He actually has to
expose himself,
and as well as Little John going to save his son.
Little John exposes Little John.
Oh no!
Sorry, continue.
Bullseye. Yeah. Yeah. That sequence. I mean, the conflict was entertaining. It was fun.
I actually liked how that was handled. I knew we would get the obligatory shoot the rope scene, but it was
I like
cool.
how it's not the first shot didn't do it. It nicked it, and then
I also like that this finally showed that, hey, Little John, man, that guy's crucial. Like he saved all those people.
He's
like,
a big boy.
Yeah.
Like Robin Hood kind of saved one of them. Like that was just.
But barely.
I liked seeing Little John's strength used in a way other than just lip service. Like, oh, that's Little John. He's the big guy.
Yeah.
I think that they did a really good job with tension when it came to this, because I forgot how everyone was going to get saved. But when you watch it, you think, oh, Robin's going to stop them by, cutting the rope at the last second, and then nobody is going to die because of it. But then you see him kicking the stools out from all of them. I'm like, wait a second. How are they going to, resolve this? Luckily, none of their necks break right off of the initial drop. And then Little John eventually comes to save them. But they're kind of hanging there for a bit. And I think that was a good job of building tension. So,
Yeah. Will Scarlet does reveal that he is his brother.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
half brother.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's when I kind of get the inkling that, there's going to be some redemption here. And he does ultimately turn back to the good around this point, I believe. Correct?
I think he just had beef with Robin, really. I don't think what I learned from this character was he didn't want to truly turn on all of them exactly. He was just trying to get to a point where
crafty
he
and
can
take the
confront
opportunity.
Robin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this scene actually kind of makes me laugh because he's going through all this emotion and like, oh, you're my brother and you ruined my life. And immediately after, Robin's just kind of like, I have a brother, and then just
Hooray.
hugs him. Yay! Okay, that's all he needed was a hug, I guess.
Yeah,
and
pretty quick
we're all
fix.
good.
Another example of what Noah said is just putting duct tape on it. Just like, yep,
Right.
here you go.
Well, and that's a story point that didn't even need to be there.
Exactly.
So why half bake it if it's like you don't even need it at all?
I think what they're trying to do, they don't succeed, but they want this character to be crucial in like it being interesting that he turns back to the good and actually helps, and like, oh,
Right.
how could we make that happen in a quick way?
That
have him be related to the main
Well,
character.
that
in
was
some way.
an extra thing they added last second. That wasn't even in the original script. I think
don't trust last second.
they
changes all
adjusted
the
that
time.
like mid filming. So
Always a sign of a good idea.
Yep.
So we have this is when the most amicable wedding of all time is occurring as well.
You mean the rape wedding?
Yeah, that was
that's another kind of point of evidence where I think they're somewhat self-aware of the comedy aspect
Yeah.
of this.
Oh,
If they're not, then it's awful.
Yeah.
what I think it is just the sheer energy of Alan Rickman. He is so commanding of the room that I think I think he's taking this kind of in his own direction, and everyone around him is maybe too scared to tap him on the shoulder and say, like,
Tone it down a notch,
hey, we
Alan."
kind of want this to be serious. even though he's totally right in his
Approach
choice
Yeah.
to doing this. So I think anytime he's on screen, everyone just decides to buy into that energy that he's giving off.
It has to be comical. I think you're right in the sense that there's a scene where Sheriff of Nottingham's mom, I think, is the witch, right? It's his mom.
Yeah, that's. I think those were
So
scenes
that's-
that were erased or like.
Yeah, that's
from
in the
original.
director's cut.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all I know is that the witch is there, and she's insisting on him just cutting through the wedding and just going straight to the raping. And no, it's bad.
I'm not laughing at
I know. I'm sorry.
So
and I
the reason
apologize.
seem like
All right.
wedding and rape, of course.
Well, the point being that the overall goal is very sinister.
Yeah.
And I think Alan Rickman's character says something like, I'm going to do this right. Something's going to be good in my life first. And which is a very odd approach
he
to
said,
that.
He said pure, I think.
Pure.
Yeah.
So he's like, I want to marry her, but then starts the process of jumping on top of her mid-nuptials.
There are weird little moments that are kind of trying to tell you the origin of his character or something of his issue, I guess. And kind of like that moment, it's earlier, where he's basically threatening Marion with killing children. And he talks to one child and says, like, I didn't have parents growing up. It's a wonder that I'm sane or something. So it's almost like there are little moments where they're trying to make him sort of like you're trying to get some sort of sympathy for him, where maybe he's had a rough life, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. But then his mom, or Mortiana, like basically grabs her belly and, oh, she's right.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah, it's, I don't know, it's weird. A lot of unnecessary comments like that where it does feel like we've been talking about how there are scenes that are ultimately unnecessary, and it does feel like they're trying to sort of rework the Robin Hood script and make it unique, but they don't put enough time into that, and there's nothing wrong with trying to do something that's traditional and fun. You know, you don't have to incorporate little complexities where it's like, oh, this person's actually related to this person, and this one is so and so's mother. Like, it
It's
just
very
complicates it where you don't need to.
Yeah, that's very much what like Star Wars Rise of Skywalker was doing. We're just like randomly manufacturing these like connections
Right.
that trying to add emotional weight because of like relations to
Yeah.
people, but really not
Yeah.
adding much at all.
It's like you really didn't need it.
Yeah. But the wedding it almost seemed like the wedding went through, like they got married.
Yeah. Except
it-
she didn't say I do.
Well, he said it 4, remember? And that
Yeah.
counts.
Well, that's more than they
I'm-
probably got at the time in reality. And, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably right. But the wedding is thwarted by Robin Hood and Azim. Azim? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. I got it. Why did I question myself?
You shouldn't have.
I shouldn't have.
that was another kind
you
of
can
dumb
cut
thing
off
is
the
trying to bang down, break down the door with that statue.
Oh, yeah.
Too drawn out.
Statue.
Yeah. But Azim gets 2 like side boss fights with the witch. Like, honestly, she should have been dead after that first one, but she comes back for round 2, and
That was comical. I
Yeah.
thought she was gone, and then the
did
next
that
thing
for
she
humor.
comes out of nowhere, and he just throws a sword at her.
yeah,
They also
it's a
didn't
spear.
show how she
Spear.
escaped his grasp in the first place.
He stabbed her with a spear the
Yeah.
first time.
No. He didn't stab her. She impaled
You're right, she
herself
impaled
upon
herself.
his spear.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that
That was a dumb move. Yeah.
She
come
impaled
out
herself
right.
on his spear.
that didn't come out right. But you
Sure
know what I'm
would.
saying.
Yeah.
David sure would.
So stupid.
Yeah, and Robin obviously has his face off with the sheriff of Nottingham, whose scar only continues to look more and more infected as the
Yeah.
movie goes along, I must add.
Well, they didn't clean it before stitching it.
It didn't look that bad when he first got cut. I was
Well-
like, you
Well,
fix
then
it."
that means we give credit to the props department or props. Why I say props to the makeup crew for constantly adjusting it. So
Yeah.
it changes scene to scene.
Is this where the moving mole comes from in Men in Tights?
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Don't think so.
Prince John has a mole that moves around every scene.
Well, that's kind of that's a Mel Brooks thing.
Oh, I know-
Because it
I
like
know
the
it is.
hump too, where it's like, wasn't your hump on the other?
Yeah,
never mind.
yeah.
Y'all just made me want to watch that movie
It-
tonight. Like,
hey.
maybe I will.
It's good.
It is
very good.
Noah's bold statement. It's good. Okay, so wedding thwarted. Sheriff of Nottingham meets his end. What did you think of the final fight between these two? And are the emotional stakes of it all high enough for you feeling it at all? Like, has it built up enough to where you're like, man, I can't wait to see Sheriff of Nottingham die?
I'm actually kind of sad to see him go.
Me too.
I
As
think
bad as
on
he is,
a
yeah.
story level,
Exactly.
I'm glad. Like, oh yeah, they're finally facing off with the main antagonist. But then again, you also are going to lose the theatrics. I think at this point, I was kind of looking at my watch, checking my phone, going like, okay, like when are we? This has to be close to the end now. This movie is a bit long. It's longer than I remembered it being.
It is a bit long.
Yeah.
Also, I had that Brick quote going through my, or not Brick quote, but Anchorman quote. Will Ferrell says it going through my head, but only for Friar Tuck. And I was like, Friar Tuck killed a guy.
Oh yeah,
Did you see that?
yeah.
He just tosses a
Which,
guy out.
by the way,
Oh.
totally avoided Friar Tuck talk.
We did. I mean, he's
He's
a
not a
drunk
big character.
friar character, and that's their take on him. I don't know if he's originally supposed to be a drunk or flawed friar, but
The actor is the guy from Office Space. He is the deeper and deeper.
oh yeah, that guy.
He also
Okay.
guest stars in Whose Line Is It Anyways? And the second I saw him, I was like, oh my god, that's the guy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really weird because I only knew him from those two things. So
Yeah, he's a drunk friar.
I love him, honestly.
I love him. AJ, do you have any closing comments on the I guess the final moments in this movie before all the Sean Connery stuff?
No.
All right, well, Sean Connery's in this movie for 2 seconds. How'd y'all feel about that?
Probably the biggest
Very
waste.
random. You could have had anyone do that. You could have had King Richard not show up at all. Like it felt like it didn't need it.
Yeah. What was
was-
the budget for this movie?
That exactly.
Like,
that was the first thing I
It was
thought.
by the way, that was a 1-day shoot for Sean Connery.
Yep.
He asked for $1 million.
Yeah, I knew it would be.
He got
astronomical.
$250,000, which is a lot for 1991.
Literal 10 seconds too.
He was
Yeah.
in there, he did his thing and got out. It made me think of how he was demanding like 20 million for what was it, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
Just like he could ask for whatever he wants. And the second I saw him, I was like, what a waste of budget.
Well, he apparently this is not verified. I didn't look up the sources on this, but Kevin Costner begged to have him in the role. So I
Sure,
think
why not?
What?
that's part of the reason.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of begging going on in this
Yeah.
And I
movie
think-
production.
I think part of his contract, they had to, this was supposed to be like a big surprise twist thing, so they didn't want to put him in the credits so that the surprise wasn't blown. So I think he upped his price for that too. But
Yeah, this was like a Nick Fury and Iron Man before that was a thing. Like,
Right.
oh, it's Sean Connery.
Sean Connery.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see him. Like, it's all right. You got Sean Connery, cool.
Weird.
Like,
And he has a strong accent, but
Oh,
not the right
yeah,
one.
everyone knows that the King of England has a very strong Scottish accent.
it's almost.
I mean, technically, Richard didn't speak English; he only spoke French and whatever else at the time,
So not Scottish.
which is why he was, not as popular as is portrayed because, he's just an English king that doesn't even speak English.
I hate when that happens.
it's
A
kind of
little problematic.
Yeah.
Highlander. That's a low budget action movie. They managed to get Sean Connery for like half the runtime of that movie, and this one could only manage a day and 5 seconds of screen time. I'm wondering kind of what happened there.
Well,
I don't think.
I feel like in so many movies, whenever you get a cameo from a famous actor, they either do it for free or they have somebody who's a friend and
Yeah.
they're like, all right, just
Yeah.
buy me lunch or something.
It might be the Scottish aspect of Highlander, actually, when I think about it. Isn't that very much set around...
It's in Scotland.
That has
Literally, Highlander, the word.
The
Yeah, there you go.
Highlands.
There you go.
But also, what's the other one? Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of another similar. Where
That-
I guess Tom Cruise had more of a role.
He earns his place, though. Like, whatever he asked
Yeah.
for that, like, he is putting it out all on the table.
Well,
Like,
he also asked to be in the movie, right? Because
Maybe,
I
yeah.
remember when we went over that, he had talked to Ben Stiller through the script, and he's like, "Hey, I want to be this character,
Yeah.
but you have to give me big hands, and I want to
wanna
dance."
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to look ugly. Like, go Tom Cruise.
I think a
love you.
better comparison would be Matt Damon in Thor Ragnarok,
Or Interstellar.
or Brad Pitt in Deadpool.
There you go. Blink and you miss it.
Yeah, literally that one. Definitely blink and you miss it.
Yep.
But with that said, let's close out the story portion of this podcast. We've talked long enough about this Robin Hood movie. On the other end of this, we'll take a quick break, but on the other end, we'll be getting into our quick reviews with numbered scores, along with what critics thought. We'll then go into some box office and close out with a little bit of franchise talk, which, spoilers, there's not a lot for this one. So we'll see you then. Welcome back. Let's talk Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. David, give us those scores.
Let me,
4 scores.
we're starting off with Reese, giving us that sweet 6.0.
Oh, wow.
6. I was trying to stay more like I didn't want to rain on anyone's parade throughout this episode. I did have my criticisms throughout, but I didn't want to taint the episode if anyone was feeling very overly positive about it, which it sounds like the group feels it's a flawed film, but I get the sense y'all are a little more positive than I am. That said, with the discussion, I think I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'll raise it a 0.5. I will go to 6.5 for this movie. I think there's enough fun on the screen here, and just a lot. It's a good production, a lot of good casting. Aside from, we'll get to it. The elephant in the room is Kevin Costner. I think rubs me the wrong way a little more than everyone else. I think he's fine out of the paltry Robin Hood options that we've had in the past films that we've covered. He comes just narrowly in second place for me. Which of a group of characters that are all not great Robin Hoods, that's not that great. I think sometimes he nails the energy of a good Robin Hood performance, but other times he's very much just your archetypal like hero who's supposed to have kind of a past that doesn't that gives him some depth, but it's all just like mouth service with none of that performance shining through in his performance for me. So I think this is a decent Robin Hood movie, a fun Robin Hood movie, a little long in the tooth. Alan Rickman lights up the room every time he's on the screen, which only emphasizes how much I wish our Robin Hood could light up the screen every time he's there.
Right.
I really want to root for this guy, but as Irina was saying, it was sad to see the Sheriff of Nottingham go at the end, because he was what brought this glimmer to the screen of like, wow, this guy's doing something. And then Robin Hood's just kind of been this, I'm the guy who's gonna save the day.
I guess the appropriate word would be sort of vanilla.
Yeah, perfect word. Vanilla Robin Hood. His Merry Men are great, though. I want to give them some credit. Love Little John. Perfect Little John. I like Morgan Freeman here. It's just kind of I like Kevin Costner. It's off for me. And I just can't give this movie perfect notes because it just, there's a better movie here with even with Kevin Costner still in the role. If he just picked a lane with the accent and maybe just tried a little harder to get me emotionally invested in his character, I could have been more on board with him in this role. But as it stands, it's an imperfect Robin Hood movie that I definitely still will not kick out of bed. I think it's a fun time, but it's imperfect, and it solidifies why I have it in the B tier of nostalgia for my childhood versus the A tier. So 6.5.
All right, next up, AJ with an 8.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, good thing about that, so I'm taking the score down to a 7. I think the good thing about this movie is nostalgia and, kind of having my cake and eating it too. I'll admit, because, nostalgia is kind of a gimme card. It's a cheap cop-out. I don't know. But the thing about this movie is it smooths over well enough all of the flaws, and there are some glaring flaws in this, don't get me wrong. But my memories of it somehow forget all that stuff, even when my memory is on a working day. Kevin Costner doesn't really bother me a whole lot, and I think it's primarily to the benefit, like the credit of his co-stars and his cast, because the support. I mean, really, the story of Robin Hood is presented in its kind of thoroughness. It's not, in its full completion. It's not exhaustive, but I get the essence of Robin Hood from this movie, because the big points are, obviously the archery, the skill. It's fun. It's got this fun aspect of it, but you still get this kind of somberness and self-reflectiveness at some points. And the relationship between the merry men in Sherwood Forest as well as the common people, that comes through on this movie. The relationship with Marion is good. Everything is passable, and you have a really good villain. I'm always a good sucker for a good villain. Alan Rickman, you can't beat him. I mean, he arguably steals the show. I really wish the whole Mortiana thing was just not even a thing. I don't understand the direction that was going. Completely unneeded. That's definitely a detractor to this movie. And there's, it is a longer movie, and there's definitely some editing that could help this movie a lot. Just cut out unnecessary fluff. And you would still have a really good distilled Robin Hood. It's not the best. It's not the peak Robin Hood. But overall, the lasting impression for me is this is one of the things I think of when I think of Robin Hood. Obviously Errol Flynn, Carrie Elwes with, Men in Tights. But this still kind of exudes the Robin Hood persona, character. And like I kind of spoke to before, that the character of the scenery and the setting is really well done in this, and the music with Michael Kamen, really a strong point for me as well. Overall, I enjoy this movie, and I don't hesitate to rewatch it, and I probably would fast forward through the off points with the Mortiana stuff and the weird kind of, I don't know, witchery, just unneeded stuff. But I mean, Alan Rickman's Sheriff of Nottingham, great. Like, that's just worth watching this movie alone for. And I can abide, Kevin Costner well enough to enjoy the rest of it. So yeah, 7. I'm fine with that.
Awesome.
All right.
Next up,
Irina.
With a 6. That he forgot to mention that part. So I'm gonna bump it up to 6.5 because
so you like me.
I do think, as we're talking about it, I think it is a 6, but the 0.5 is sort of my nostalgia for this film and the fact that it's still fun to watch. I would probably watch it again, but with people. It's kind of fun to laugh along every now and then.
yeah,
And I think it does invite the audience to laugh along intentionally. But my reason for this low score is I find the beginning and the end of this film to be sort of weak. And the middle chunk, though, is almost perfect for me. Aside from a lot of these sort of, I guess, blows from the side where it's just this weird trying to connect certain dots without much thought behind it. From what I read, it seems like they had some time constraints making this movie, as well as some competition, so they were kind of rushing to get this on screen before other Robin Hoods, kind of stole the spotlight. So I can see why that would happen, and they didn't have as many chances to revise certain scenes, but they still managed to come up with something that, to me, has a lot of energy. And I still feel interested. If it were on, I would probably like look at it and be like, oh yeah, this movie, and then sit down and then get sucked into it again.
It's a good
So-
on television movie.
I think 6.5 is fair. It's fun. It's getting closer to what I want from a Robin Hood film, but get rid of all the extemporaneous stuff. Focus on just what the legend of Robin Hood is. I think they probably felt pressured to put something new and out there just to kind of set it apart from other Robin Hood
Yeah.
films. So I'm 6.5. I think that's fair.
All right.
All right, next up, David, myself, with a 6.5.
And we're all kind of falling in line here.
Yeah, I'll do my best to say this. I got a dog that decided that my lap was the place to be.
Doesn't everybody?
Sure would. All right. Yeah, this one is I dabbled with 6, I dabbled with 7, and I just thought, split the difference. This movie can be very fun at times. I would say the highs of this movie reach anywhere from an 8.5 to a 9, just for very small segments. But the lows for me can also got pretty low. It's very drudging at times. The score is obviously the most iconic thing about this movie, more so than Kevin Costner. I think I gave this slightly lower score than I did with the 2010 version, and I think mainly because that movie did something different and executed it to the best of its ability. It's not what you think of as Robin Hood, whereas this one definitely is more aligned with, I think, the traditional Robin Hood. It's just, Kevin Costner's not the guy. I think we can all say that at this point. He's just not the right Robin Hood. I think that there's a lot of good aspects that he tried to implement. It just didn't work for me. I think the writing was off at times as well, where I didn't believe the words that some of the people were saying. I had the most fun when Alan Rickman was on screen, seeing him just take a dagger and stab things on a mantle, or just like fling himself emotionally around a corner. It's just way more entertaining. Whereas, there are times where, I think it's a good time, and under the right circumstances, this could go up in score. But I think you need to have alcohol and friends. So, on my own, 6.5. Next up, we have Noah with a 6.
I'll keep it. I think this movie is lackluster.
Okay.
You sounded a little more positive than I
you
throughout
did.
this episode.
I think it's fun.
It has good moments.
6 is fun, but disappointing.
What is the worst part about this movie for you?
The lack of Yetis.
That's
for David,
That's
yeah.
David's detriment there. No Yetis, no football, as usual. It's not called... The problem with this movie for David is it's not called The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, a movie he gave a 7 out of 10 to.
Hey guys, what did I say that movie was?
Rewatchable.
Guess what I rewatched this past week?
Yeah.
I know you watched
Tomb
it.
of the Dragon Emperor, baby. I rewatched it.
And how was it?
You didn't watch it. He put it on, got maybe like a third of the way through, and turned it off.
7 out of 10. 7 out of 10.
Oh, that makes it so
What, did you
good.
like it, David?
Yeah, I loved it. I was just like not in the mood that night.
That's so good.
All right.
Oh, man.
Continue, Noah. Finish your review.
My opinion on this movie is that there's not a lot of things that are like inherently like really bad, right? There're just a lot of things that, take it down a notch, right? Like Kevin Costner's mullet. It takes it down a notch.
It pulls you out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin Costner's American voice. And then the subsequent change to British,
And not
Another
good
thing
British.
that, I deduct a little pointage for. The fact that the villain is way more charismatic than the hero. Another
And that
point
happens
away.
at times, though.
Yeah, but not when it's Robin Hood. It shouldn't. Robin
That's
Hood
fair.
needs to be charismatic, and Nottingham needs to be a little scumbag, which he is. But he's more charismatic than the hero. How is that possible? Because Alan Rickman is amazing, and Kevin Costner is not Robin Hood.
I thought you were just going to say he's not.
Oh, yeah. Because Kevin Costner is not.
I forgot that they literally
Alan
get
Rickman.
catapulted over a wall. That was fun.
Yeah. No, I
And then
a brilliant
Christian Slater.
but I think it's a fun movie, and I think it's just not amazing. Like, I want a different Robin Hood. I want some things to be less goofy, but I still want to have Okay, here's the good thing I'll say about it. I think it does have a good heart to the movie. There's a good heart, and I don't know if that's the music or what, but I feel good watching it.
No, there's a jovialness when they're in Sherwood Forest to the merry men and then just what they're doing.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Just feels right.
Yeah, exactly. But that could also be nostalgia. So I don't know. I don't really know. I just want to recast Robin Hood as a different character and see where they take it. Anyways,
So
that's it.
Six out of 10.
Oh,
AJ,
yeah.
you crunch those numbers for us.
All right, so our group average is a 6.5. So that puts it in the company of Constantine, Lost Episode. Excuse me, that was a 6.6. Van Helsing at a 6.5. Highlander, we mentioned during this episode. Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas, just below at a 6.4. And Die Hard 2, 6.7. Just kind of bookending that there.
Van Helsing
Actually, not
is
as many 6.5s as I would have expected.
I think Van Helsing is the perfect comp for this. Just the right mix of things wrong and things right with a movie. Same with Highlander, I think. Critics split down the middle here. Rotten Tomatoes 50% with an audience score of 72%, so audience is a little more positive. Metacritic 51 out of 100 with an audience score of 7.0. And IMDb at 6.9.
Nice.
So, mixed positive, I would say. If you're averaging out the audience with the critics, it's very much in that 60s range, I would say. So, definitely not a full loss here. Honestly, this is one of the first ones where I'm like, I looked up the scores. That's exactly what I was expecting. You know, where it's like, yeah, critics were split, like down the middle. Half of them liked it, half of them didn't. And audiences liked it a little bit more than critics. Like, that is exactly what I would have predicted if I had, or what I did predict I would see. So, no surprises there. Anyone y'all surprised at the scores at all
Not
for that?
really.
That's pretty spot on.
It sounds like we all just hit like around the same spot with it, like the audience.
I think that speaks to this movie's inoffensive nature.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing like where you're looking at it like, oh, that really rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
But there's moments that like bring levity and bring life to it that you're like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Just
It's colorful.
the definition of an inoffensive movie, I would say.
I agree. It is inoffensive. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'll give up now.
You nailed it.
Noah's quote on the DVD art is inoffensive.
And critic Noah thought
Inoffensive.
inoffensive.
All right. Box office. This movie released on January 14th. Not the first Robin Hood to release on January 14th that we've covered. I think the Russell Crowe one also... No, not the Russell Crowe one. The 2018 Taron Egerton one also released on January 14th, which is kind of weird.
Huh. Yeah.
But also playing at the time was City Slickers, Backdraft, Jungle Fever, and this one... Why is a movie titled this? But it's called Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
There's a couple of movies I feel like are playing off the humor titles like that.
That's too long, though. Like, have y'all seen Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead?
That sounds like one of those kids'
I lived it.
books.
Oh, no. Yeah.
The
Movie
Boxcar Kids.
What? Okay, we're gonna bring inflation into this one, so fun times when that has to happen. When that happens.
Oof.
Movie was budgeted at the time at $48 million. 1991, by the way. That, with inflation, brings this one up to $103 million in today's dollars. So $103 million budget. We're going to guess what this movie did worldwide, including the with inflation in the equation here. So I'll go to AJ last, since this is his miniseries. Let's start with Noah this time.
Here's what I think. I think this made some good money.
What you got?
I'm gonna say 300 million.
300 million.
Actually, no, 400.
400 million.
Yep.
Irina.
I actually can't answer because I accidentally saw what the box office result was.
David.
I'm kind of glad Noah went up even higher because I think it did lower. It didn't get.
You're wrong.
I probably will be based on statistics. But it just seems like we would have had a sequel if it made over triple the middling results in the critics. I think that it was supposed to carry farther with all the people that were leading
Did you
this.
just say opposed to?
Opposed.
Let him go, Noah. Let him
Sorry.
go.
Well, Noah's trying to get back his
I need
because
some
he,
ground.
he had to slip up.
Supposedly.
And let's say I'm going to give this 200.
200 million inflated. AJ.
I will sit right in the middle at 300. I don't know how to grade a January release. That's kind of tough. I do know Kevin Costner is a big name, so I'll sit at the triple mark.
What a political answer.
All right. So I'm going to give you the uninflated first. Noah was the only one that guessed above the uninflated number.
That means I win.
Wow.
Yeah. So uninflated, this movie made $390 million.
Wow.
Dang!
Off of a 60? What was the budget?
Uninflated was $48 million budget.
Oh, wow.
Today's dollars 103.
Dude, that made like septuple.
So pushing it
A
into
word, right?
Septuple.
Is that not the right way to say that? Is that wrong?
No,
For
it's
7?
like the way you said it mixed with how you looked when you said it.
his eyes.
His eyes were wide, his mouth was
He's like,
agape.
that's like septuple.
That movie made like septuple.
Are y'all ready
We love
for
you.
Are y'all ready
Yeah,
for the
I'm sorry.
number?
Good.
Yes.
So punching it into the inflation calculator, we end up with a result of 839 million.
Well, we lost.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
huge.
The movie's huge.
Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Unbelievably huge. Like,
that's huge.
Now I understand why people still try to make Robin Hood movies. This one was like the Titanic of Robin Hood movies. Like, it didn't make Titanic numbers. Let's not get too excited. But wow. Like, I was not I knew this. Okay, going in, I knew this movie was a hit. So but if you were to ask me, I would have not guessed that big. But I knew this movie did well. Like, you see that poster too often. You know that score so well. It's Kevin Costner. Like, there's a reason they kept recycling this score. You don't recycle a score of a movie that wasn't a hit.
Dragonheart.
Dragonheart was a hit. Why do you think yes, it got only direct-to-DVD sequels, but that is a 5-movie franchise, technically.
I don't remember what it ended up making.
It did well. It didn't do, like, amazing, but it did
Not
well.
this amazing. This was really amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, crazy numbers here for Robin Hood. This moves us on to franchise talk, which, guys, I already warned you, there's not a lot. This movie came out in a time where movies didn't have to have sequels. Like, you have Gladiator, you have Titanic, you have... I keep saying Gladiator even though it was like 10 years later. But you have all these other movies that came out, Dances with Wolves, that were massive hits, don't get sequels. This was very much a movie that did not have a lot of sequel talk at all. It was just a solid, like, epic historical movie that came out, not even historical, like adjacent to that, action movie that came out, did really good numbers, probably just cleaned up massively with VHS sales, and they were on to the next thing.
And it's also a naturally concluded story. Like, there's not, they could technically make another story and continue off it. However, they wrapped up all the character arcs nicely.
Has there ever been a Robin Hood that got a sequel?
I don't know. Don't ask me that right
Already,
now.
I won't.
I'm not
I
sure.
retract that statement.
Maybe they did
question.
way back in the day, but none of the more recent Robin Hoods have had any of that. But maybe, who knows? Maybe some British production or something that I don't
Maybe
know
a
about.
variation of the Robin Hood story that did better maybe got a sequel.
Yeah. I do kind of miss the days, though, when a movie was very successful and people were like, cool, let's do something different next. Like, we don't have to make a sequel to this. And this is an example of that. However, and I don't even know if these comments are real or fabricated, but I did find an interview with Kevin Costner in 2005. And let me find it on my thingy.
Yeah, I think
here.
that was the main thing that I came across way back whenever I was looking at these is
Yes.
Kevin Costner had said in an interview that he was making a sequel.
Yeah, and
Like
let me
funding
find...
himself or something like that.
There was an interview with Kevin Costner on the Irish Examiner where the 50-year-old Oscar winner is hoping to... This is a quote from the article. The 50-year-old Oscar winner is hoping to cash in on the success of the film by producing a big screen spin-off, which will catch up with the legendary character and his merry men later on in life. And he says in a quote, "I am a little older. I could take the whole story a stage further, which is an idea I am working on at the moment." That is the only breadcrumb for a sequel that we have on this. That was 2005.
If that
Probably
is
not.
a joke, then it's a very
It's a weird joke that's not funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have to believe that this was probably real. Like, you have to believe that there's talk that's happened behind closed doors about, hey, Robin Hood was a massive hit.
It's good enough for me.
And I also think that in 2005, the Ridley Scott version of this was probably bopping around in people's heads too before, like, in pre-production. Not even in pre-production yet, but something tells me maybe Ridley Scott took the wind out of the sails on this one when that production started ramping up.
And then Taron
Tarantino?
Edgerton tore the
Tarantino.
sails.
I think it was already long dead by the
Yeah.
time the 2018 rolled around. But I would have to think... I'd put my money on this 2010 version being maybe that's the gritty follow-up that would have been intended to... Even though it is an origin story, maybe that would have been kind of what something like a sequel to this looked like. But there you go. Like, that's the end of the story for this one. I definitely don't see a sequel to this one ever happening. Do y'all think there's a snowball's chance in hell of Robin Hood 2
For this?
for this one?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Yeah, I think the only possibility is remakes or
Wait.
just a completely new Robin Hood.
Maybe a
If you-
reference.
If you listen to Reese's words carefully, he said a snowball's chance in hell. Now, how likely do you think it is that a snowball would be in hell? Not very likely. That means, do you think there's a chance that happens?
Yeah.
That at least that amount, maybe.
I think that's where the expression comes from, but
Yeah.
No, well,
I don't. For what it's worth, I don't think I perfectly used the expression. So we can move on. You know what?
I don't think you did.
All right, this closes out our discussion of the Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, including and also lump in the other two Robin Hoods in there. It's a nice little trilogy we created here with these three movies. But the miniseries is not over. Next week, we're getting into one of my favorite movies that I'm so glad AJ picked. It is The Mask of Zorro.
Yay!
I'm correct. I'm
Nice.
correct in announcing that one next, right?
that is
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Mask of Zorro. Here we go. 2 Zorro films to watch. Can't freaking wait to talk about this movie.
Yeah.
are
and just
y'all-
like there's a bunch of, all sorts of Robin Hood movies and stories out there, there's also a lot of older Zorro movies we are talking about. The Antonio Banderas ones.
Yes. Martin Campbell, excellent director, also did Casino Royale.
The Mask and Legend.
Yeah. Can't wait. All right. Good night, you guys. See y'all next week with The Mask of Zorro. Goodbye.
Loxley, I'll cut your heart out with a spoon.